Welcome to another Phoenix Snap webinar. We are joined by our awesome partners at Pliops. My name is William Bell, Executive Vice President of Product Development for Phoenix Snap, and I have the wonderful Grant Jacobson, Senior Director for Strategic Alliances from Pliops here with me. Welcome, Grant.
Thanks, William. Great to be with you, and thanks everyone for joining.
All right, perfect. I'm going to get a couple things out of the way quickly here. Today's conversation is going to be about solving data challenges, specifically database oriented for most of you on the call, and how we are working with the team at Pliops to provide interesting, unique infrastructure solutions that can change the game for you and your database performance. Some of you are interested in gift cards, I'm sure, so we're going to give away 2 of those at the end of this presentation. Just wait around till the end and I'll announce the names live. I think from a housekeeping perspective, we're going to do a few poll questions to get things kicked off. First and foremost, we're trying to figure out what types of database management systems you have currently deployed in your environment, and that'll help us get an idea of what the scope of the audience on the call today. Maybe we can mention a couple direct things that make sense for you and your specific database. Relational databases, NoSQL databases, it doesn't really matter for the purposes of today's conversation, at least in most parts. But we'd love to understand what people are working. Cool, there we go. Looks like a lot. Databases abound. Hopefully you're attending a database webinar because it matters to you. So there you go. How are you deploying these databases today? Are you getting them as a managed service from a cloud provider? Are you deploying them on-prem in a co-location facility? Like, what does that look like for you? I'd imagine most of it's gonna be hybrid, but I'm interested to have it's one of those prove me wrongs, right? I feel like at this point, most everyone has something deployed in public cloud, something deployed in an on-premise data center, inside a co-location facility, whatever that looks like. All right, what do we get? All right, yeah. I mean, at least I was right from a percentage perspective, but it is interesting. I do wonder how many of you that put on-prem infrastructure, it's actually in a co-location facility. Maybe that question could be, a little bit more clear, but that is fine. Last one, and I enjoy all this participation. Thank you very much for everyone clicking the buttons and helping us gather a little bit of data. Hopefully one of these is going to speak to why you're here today, right? I think that certainly there's lots of interest around databases and making them perform better, but I would imagine probably struggling with something internally. And I'd love to try to understand what that is. We're going to touch on probably all of these in some capacity today. So I think that should be solid for most of you, regardless of what the problem is. Okay, yeah, I mean, all of the above. Databases are hard, turns out. And so I feel like, there's something for everyone here in the conversation today. All right, we're gonna dive right into it. So what we're seeing as an infrastructure cloud service provider, our partners at Pliops, looking at the market, gathering data, and trying to understand how people are making decisions about databases, right? And I think ultimately it's a price performance problem that people are trying to solve, right? There's a minimum performance like baseline that the application needs, that the consumer is consuming to make everyone happy, whether that is an end user or an internal end user, right? There's some type of minimum baseline, and that minimum baseline has a cost, and that cost varies heavily based on how it's deployed, who's managing it, what technology, what database type of database it is. There's a lot of variables there, but there are some trends, right? And I think that ultimately, when you look at least relational databases, and some of these questions probably could be asked a little better, but at least when it comes to relational database, it's a two-horse race right now. It's a lot of Postgres and a lot of MySQL, and the answer about where that's deployed is like everywhere. The answer is everywhere. And I think that increasingly staffing and expertise is becoming a big challenge. The cost of the infrastructure to make those databases perform at their peak capability is a challenge that people are focusing on. And you know, I think that when you look at the public cloud as an alternative, initially people see it as this panacea of like, oh, amazing, everything's going to be better because I moved to a managed database service from a public cloud provider. But what they're realizing is either it costs too much, or it doesn't quite perform the way they thought it did, or they're not happy with the versioning and patching schedules of a managed database service. There's just a lot of issues that come with giving up control. And I think that what people are searching for, and really truly what we're focusing our efforts on as an infrastructure company, is how do we help customers optimize for as many of those things as possible? Get cloud consumption, improve performance, reduce TCO. And you know, we're an infrastructure company, so we're not going to help you manage the databases. You got to do some stuff yourself, or find a partner that can do that. But you know, we're going to try to check as many boxes as we can, and we'll talk more about that. So we do have some partners on the call as well, and I wanted to kind of at least stick a slide in for you guys on the what's in it for you and what's out there. I do think a lot of the attendees on the call probably exist inside of these verticals, but you know, ultimately high performance databases and database needs are pretty ubiquitous, but they also have some gravitational weight towards a specific industry verticals, you know, especially for the on-prem segment. So you find that a lot of these industry verticals are still doing a lot of things in data centers themselves. And I think that it is rightfully so, because what we observe at least is that there's a cost problem with large scale relational databases in managed database services that exist in public cloud. And the performance that you get for that price is also not perfect. It's good, it's fine, and you can make it go faster. Like, I think that's the one thing we do see a lot in public cloud is you can keep turning the knob until it goes fast enough, but then the cost starts to get obscene, right? And so you're always balancing those two things. And certainly databases, increasingly NoSQL databases, but databases as a category are going to just continue to explode. The amount of data that we're generating that needs to be queryable and managed is just going through the roof. And I don't see any sign of that stopping. So if anybody here is in the database management segment of either internally or as a service, then you know what I'm talking about. Like they're not. All right. So I want to try to break down the problem into a few categories that will help drive the conversation, as well as they will be topical for what Grant's going to present around the Pliops XDP technology. So let's try to set it up. I'm going to tee it up for Grant. He's going to knock it out of the park. So ultimately, you know, the main four segments that we see challenges around databases and managing databases are dealing with data growth. You see this kind of exponential growth in data. A lot of it is like unstructured and just kind of sitting places. It's going into kind of quasi databases like Elasticsearch and other type of things. But there's just a ton of data being generated in general. And the infrastructure is not scaling with that. And your ability to continue to just buy infrastructure or spend on the cloud infrastructure is not being tolerated, especially right now in these kind of downturny times, right? There's a lot of CFOs sitting there with their eraser out, racing from budget lines. And so as you see that data explode, and your performance, because the data is exploding, starts to degrade, and the cost the cost that you have to deliver on the performance promises and SLAs you have internally continues to rise. That's a huge challenge, and it's not really suitable just to tune for any one of those components. So you have to get that cost, performance, capacity ratio, triumvirate, whatever you want to call it, down, and kind of move towards the center. Lower cost, better management of data, higher performance of the applications and underlying databases. You know, it was interesting in the poll earlier that no one mentioned like security and integrity as a component. You know, I do think that there's a lot of, you know, encryption is kind of this catch-all for data for data inside of databases. It's like, okay, we're going to encrypt the fields that we think are most sensitive, and then that's what we got. We did it, right? I think a lot of people do find out over time that data integrity can be problematic, as well as the traditional things designed to protect data, right? Especially at large scale. Database backups can be helpful, but you know, they can take a long time to restore from. You know, technologies like RAID can be helpful, but they can be really difficult to rebuild and get performance while you're rebuilding them. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And yeah, ultimately the integrity of the data and other things that we're not going to talk about today, but you know, ensuring that specific data points are not manipulated after they're written is another area where I see significant growth. And then ultimately maintaining availability of those systems. And certainly the kind of the traditional relational databases have this, most of them have a very robust built-in horizontal scaling capability, but the vertical scaling capability can be difficult to manage. And I think that that's a place that we can see a lot of improvement over time in terms of the size of the data sets that can be managed in a cluster and still get the performance that you need. So when you look at this modern database admin, I guess, users sure, but like administrator needs, and the infrastructure bits that they're hoping to get is they want the technology to be super powerful. They want scalability that's, you know, as near as instantaneous as you can get, with an ability to retract some of that scale as necessary, a built-in data protection scheme, and the ability to automate all that infrastructure to get to that outcome that they need. And I think that when you look at all those components, it is easy to say, oh, hyperscale, public cloud, AWS, Google, Microsoft. But you start to find the problems that can creep up with not being in control of the infrastructure, not being in control of the software at times, depending on what's going on and which service you're using, because they're not always vanilla-ish versions of these capabilities. It's not as simple as just saying, okay, I'm going to pick up my database, take a backup and a dump in the database and move it somewhere else. And I think that delivering this OpEx, you know, getting a solution that is OpEx focused, is instantly scalable, and gives you control and visibility, and a lack of vendor lock-in is a struggle. That's what we're hoping to solve together. I hope that at this point, most of you guys have moved your databases to some type of NVMe, or at least say to SSD. You know, it is, however, we are getting to a point where the hardware isn't exactly keeping up. The capacity of NVMe for the cost is still not the best, although getting better. CPUs can be easily overburdened by database processing. and even doing basic operations like compression. And I think that the scale out kind of just software managed, trying to, take all of these capabilities around what you can do with data sets and execute them on the CPU in software at scale across the cluster presents extreme challenges, right? That aren't easily overcome. And I think that you end up in this vicious cycle on the right. Bigger data, more storage and performance and CPU needs, more growth horizontally and vertically. You try to add software management on top of it to manage all the data points and to manage all the data sets. And then you figure out there's these bottlenecks, and then you give it more horsepower, right? And that's just a very costly, vicious cycle that we're hoping to try to break down. And here we go. My man, Grant from Pliops, is going to talk about what they've done in this area. And then I'm going to come back and talk about how we're working together to make this accessible to everybody. Go ahead, Grant.
Thank you, William. It's good to be with everyone. So what we're looking at here is a Pliops card. It's a PCIe card that is available with Phoenix Snap in a Pliops powered instance. So we're going to talk about why Pliops, or why we call this the Extreme Data Processor. So why, what's it do, and why should you care about this? So let's start with everything William just laid out with respect to databases and database infrastructure. And what we did at Pliops is we figured out that there were just a ton of inefficiencies around traditional infrastructure. The CPU is busy, the storage can't keep up with that CPU, or then it did keep up. Now, as William just mentioned, NVMe SSDs are extremely fast and much faster than the CPUs. So what this card is really a data services card that enables a much more efficient data infrastructure. That's going to provide the accelerated database performance that everybody needs, more transactions, more queries across the different types of databases, more user and data density, meaning per node. Let's say you've got to scale up your data set, more users at the same time with that more performance. So we're talking about scaling the database instances, scaling the workload associated with the database, and of course, there is a need to make sure that data is protected. William mentioned RAID. There is built-in integrated RAID 5 in this card. So it comes protected. So it's not just about performance. No one cares about performance when you lose your data. So it's got to be protected. So it's in short, we're eliminating the inefficiencies to unlock this technical value around performance, around acceleration, scaling, protection. So we're doing a lot more with less. So we don't need to do the traditional things to get that performance, to get more users and so on. This card really just unlocks this capability. So I touched on a lot of this here, but we are doing more with less hardware. With that integrated protection, for example, we're increasing system reliability. We're increasing data resiliency with this, and we can use the NVMe drives to do that. That's available from Phoenix Snap. The scalability is available. Basically, we're taking traditional infrastructure and we're taking it to the next level, and that's what's meant here by modernize. This is the latest technology inside of the Pliops card. are very sophisticated data algorithms, and to actually manage that data flow between the database application and that local storage. And by managing that data flow, we are going to get a lot more value out of it. We can manage it to make sure it's protecting the SSDs so they don't wear out. We can get you a lot more capacity, up to about 6x, which I'll talk about, to have a place for that increasing data, the data volume for the database. And we can also make sure that the acceleration is happening with that data flow. So overall, driving a much more cost-effective infrastructure, data infrastructure, because we're doing a lot more than you would normally. And so we're improving the efficiency with that lower TCO. We're optimizing the database to get everything out of it that you need in terms of performance, in terms of availability, in terms of scaling, that sort of thing. So it's really the latest technology on the planet. Nobody else is doing this, and the only place this is available is with PhoenixNet. So again, just to give it to you one other way here, it's not just an accelerator card, but it does do that. It is not just a RAID card, but it does do that with this integrated RAID. I mentioned getting more out of the SSDs. This is really up to about 6x more, because there's inline compression, because you can actually use the full drive. You may yourself do this, but in general, we understand that many organizations do not fill up their drives. What's the problem with filling up the drive, and why don't they do that? Well, it's because it impacts performance. You go over 60, 70%, and performance starts to degrade. With the Pliops card in the cloud instance from PhoenixNet, you can fill it up all the way, or even, if you're a little worried, 95%. So you're getting a lot more data storage, a lot more capacity out of those drives than you would otherwise. So all this results in much more efficiency and therefore a lower TCO. So we asked you about the databases that you may use. The Pliops XDP within the instance covers all of these databases and probably a lot more. So it's very good with respect to transactional applications. On the SQL side, we're showing you some of the more popular databases. On the same thing on the NoSQL side. But even storage software, if you're using a software-defined storage, and again, we've got 4 listed below, there's benefit for that as well. And then finally, we're showing on the bottom left, on the analytics side, there's databases really inside of these applications that we can help. So it really is applicable across a very broad set of databases and workloads. So going one more level on the Pliops XDP, Extreme Data Processor, we're really highlighting here 3 different data services in effect to give you what I've just been talking about. If we start at the bottom here where we talk about the XDP RAID Plus, that's really this built-in data integrity, data protection for these NVMe drives that are in the instance. And so if you know what RAID is, which is the way to protect the data, that's built in. It just comes with the instance in this case. Above that, we're talking about XDP ExcelDB, which is the database acceleration. And that is where the performance acceleration and the performance benefit comes from to get all the performance out of the infrastructure for the database. And above that is a key value accelerator that is really for real-time analytics. To get just a little nerdy here, this is really around a key value storage engine that is built into the card to get even more performance and even less latency out of the setup here. So all together here, it's really about data services and how we sort of carve that out as we talk about it. So if I just kind of drill down on the XDP ExcelDB, this is the acceleration part of the capability. This is a best-in-class database accelerator. And again, it's for SQL, NoSQL, and other applications. Some numbers on the bottom, very important, kind of stunning actually, if you think about it, because we're not changing anything in the infrastructure. We're not changing the database. We're not changing the application. We're just adding the card, and it's 2.5 times higher throughput. It's 8 times better latency. It is 30% better utilization of the CPU. Why? Because the CPU is being offloaded to the XDP card. And by the way, that means that the CPU is available for other things besides managing the storage stack. And I mentioned the capacity benefit. That's amazing actually, because it just extends the value that you would have otherwise by up to 6 times. So pretty good capability there. Again, all delivered with the card for the benefit of the database. Next slide. RAID Plus, XDP RAID Plus. So a little bit more about that. That is best-in-class protection. It's best-in-class because it's already built in. There's no impact to performance when the RAID kicks in. It's 12 times faster than, let's call that, traditional RAID, and I'll get into that in a little bit. It is 5 times faster. We all know that sometimes the SSDs fail and you have to rebuild those. When the SSD is large in size, that becomes a real issue because it takes a lot longer to rebuild a larger, bigger SSD. With this instance and Pliops inside, it's 5 times faster than normally. It's about 7 minutes a terabyte, which is pretty amazing. 18 times better SSD endurance. That's going to also translate into lower costs. And again, you have the capacity benefit as well. So let's get into a little bit of all of that. So the XDP ExcelDB features are what delivers this performance acceleration. And this example here, we're partnering with Oracle and their MySQL database. Together, we did some testing, and it's a 3.4x increase in their transactions per second. And that was done with a TPCC benchmark. For those who are familiar with that, it's a pretty industry standard measure of transactions. So we compared the open source MySQL, and maybe you guys use the open source without the XDP, with the Oracle MySQL Enterprise Edition, with the XDP from Pliops, and again, no changes to the database, no changes to the server or anything, and there's a 3.4 times more transactions per second. So that's That's with the same license. That is also, by the way, with respect to scaling, that's 2 times the number of database instances. So it went from 2 to 4 in this case. And that's also with doubling the users in this environment, and therefore a much more cost-effective setup, doing a lot more with it and doing it faster. So this is what we've been talking about with respect to ExcelDB. I guess a good way to net this out for you is when we talk to customers, they say, well, we want more performance, but we also want more scalability and we want more protection, but there's a trade-off because all this stuff costs money. And now with this available, there's no more trade-offs. You can have it all and do it for less. So you can cost reduce your environment while getting a lot more capability. Next. A couple more examples here. We talked about the MySQL, same idea with MariaDB, if that's your database. Again, comparing the software only with the database plus XDP, getting more performance, less latency, and a better story. The other thing, of course, just to make the point again, this is protected performance. So it's one thing, you can accelerate your database, but it's not necessarily protected. This is all built in. So you get the performance benefit, but you also get the protection. Next. Yeah, Postgres, been a very popular database. Same idea again, comparing software only with the database plus XDP. Very similar. We could do this across all the databases, but it's really the same idea here, just making it better. Next. Mongo. Mongo is very popular and 2.3x more performance in this case. This is operations per second, a little different than queries. But again, much more efficient, much more capable type of operation and capability. XCP RAID Plus, just a few slides about that. I mentioned this is really integrated RAID within the capability. Again, no more trade-offs with all this stuff. And let's talk about that. Starting with the capacity capability, much more capacity, more efficient, supporting larger amounts of data. Databases are growing. You have to have a place to put those. The good news is the SSDs are getting larger, but how do you manage all that capacity and still protect it? And that's what this is here. This is up to 6 times more data because we do compression. There's the efficiency from the card and how we do that, and I'll just again get a little nerdy and tell you that all the random writes, for example, come into the storage as serial writes. So there's no random to thrash the data, so or thrash the drives rather. It's all serialized, it's all sequential, and that makes it a lot more efficient in how we write to the drives. And we get performance from that in addition to the efficiency. And then I mentioned previously, you can actually fill up the drive. That's kind of unique. So you can get, if you have a big drive, you should, basically get all the value out of it. And here's what I meant about that. So here we're looking at traditional, just how the world works today with data center SSDs. The more you fill it, the less performance there is. And yes, this purple line is what you get here, very consistent performance. And let's just talk about that for a second. With databases and applications in general, it's not necessarily consistent at all. It's very choppy. It's not predictable. You actually need to be able to predict things. There's an impact directly to productivity. Having this consistency and the predictability of your performance is essential these days, and that's really what we're delivering here. As you fill up the drive, it just stays consistent. I mentioned SSD rebuilds when they fail. This is really what that is about. That's 5 times faster. So in today's world, before Pliops, it's about 35 minutes per terabyte. Getting that down to 7, pretty amazing. So when you have 16 terabyte drives, for example, that's 16 times 35 minutes. And that's because of how traditional RAID rebuilds drives. What we do is we're a lot more intelligent here. So we only have to rebuild the data that has been impacted. So overall, it's 5 times faster. So minimal impact on your QoS. And the other thing I'll say here is that the performance impact during the rebuild is maybe 20%. So it doesn't go to 0. It actually is just a little bit of impact on performance, and it's much shorter, obviously, because it's a faster rebuild. And this is what it looks like. If we just think about this over time, you have the setup running, SSD fails, little bit of impact on throughput performance, and then it goes right back up after the rebuild. So it's consistent and it's predictable and a much better overall database experience. I think this is my last slide here, just to show you on the integrated performance protection versus a traditional RAID 5. If we just compare reads, writes in total, it's 11 times more throughput. That's throughput in megabytes per second, let's say, than traditional hardware RAID 5. So again, no changes to the setup, to the software, to the server. Just add the card, and we're squeezing out the efficiency. We're optimizing the performance and capability here, including the protection. And back to you, William.
Awesome, Grant. Thank you so much for walking us through what XCP can do. I have never been personally more impressed with a capability from a piece of hardware that can just go into a server, not become the data store, not optimize some random thing, an application specific API, but just basically intercept the storage data path and better manage that as it's being written to disk. And it can have some pretty crazy impacts on the way your databases perform and how they scale. So why this is all interesting, I think, from a PhoenixNet perspective, for the last 2.5, 3 years, we have been reimagining the way that data center infrastructure is consumed and trying to build a future where companies can move towards a instantaneous consumption OpEx platform, but don't have to trap themselves and lock themselves into an API, which is essentially what the public cloud hyperscalers are, as an API that you integrate with, and then your application stuff there. And really just give you an option. It's an in the middle option, right? You don't have to do everything yourself. You don't have to buy hardware and buy switches and manage it and stick it in a data center. You don't have to go to a public cloud operator and pay a lot more for a lot less and get, essentially massive vendor lock-in as an outcome. The reality of the situation is there's going to be a place for all of this though, right? There are services that we're never going to build that the hyperscalers have built, and they are fantastic. There are things that we're never going to deliver as an infrastructure as a service option that you may have to buy, consume, and manage yourself. And it's the intersection of all of that that is the vision for bare metal cloud and the future of the PhoenixNAP business and our ability to instantaneously deliver infrastructure resources to users in the way that they demand. API, automation tooling, user interface, region by region, wherever you need it. These are the problems that we're trying to solve. And one of the places that we think we're going to see huge differentiation is in our ability to bring the best of breed hardware and infrastructure technologies to you as the consumer so that you can consume, experiment, whatever is necessary for your business to try to get you rolling and provide a new outcome for the way that you manage your applications, databases, storage layers, whatever that is. So with Pliops XDP on bare metal cloud, you get the instantaneous delivery of an instance that is a fully dedicated server that is combined or has a Pliops XDP card on board. You have today it's a 4 by 4 terabyte node implementation. So you have 16 or a little bit less than 16 usable terabytes because of the stuff that Grant was talking about. You get to use all those drives. There's no RAID parity loss or anything like that. You get to use all the drives and they're full capacity. You get to use it like a data store. It shows up in the operating system as a drive essentially, right? And you just write your data to it the way you would with your any other application. You build a folder and on the file system, and you write to it with whatever application it is. There are some applications that work better than others. Databases have a massive compression and things like that that can be done more efficiently on cards, on hardware, rather than on CPU or in software. And I think that ultimately, we talked about the areas that we've seen the most dramatic improvement, and databases are really truly at the front and center of that and the heart of that. You get all that capacity, you get the data fault protection that XDP provides on top of those NVMe drives. So you lose one, you call our support team, they put another one in, and everything's hunky-dory. Everything just rebuilds. You don't have a massive penalty around the time that you, a penalty around the rebuild time, and everything just keeps humming along. And this results in a cost reduction to your business. This is an example of what it looks like. This is an internal version that we've been working towards, and there'll be a new version out here soon. But essentially, with bare metal cloud, you can use our infrastructure as code tooling, you can use our API, use the user interface, deploy infrastructure on demand by the month, by the hour. I think with the Pliops card, we're doing a by the month minimum, but still by the month. It'll be the new version that will be out soon will be less than what you see here, probably something closer to like $1,200, $1,300 a month, but you're going to get a lot of infrastructure for that capability. And yeah, you just consume it like any other infrastructure service, like an EC2 VM or a Google Cloud VM. You get SSH login and you put your data on it, and it's yours. The difference being is that the instance is dedicated to you, so you have no noisy neighbors, you have nothing that's going to impact your performance in any way. You know exactly what you're going to get out of that box every single time that you deploy one. You can combine that with our network storage service to like write other types of data. You can put multiple terabytes or petabytes in our object store and then bring that data down to that instance for processing. However you want to manage it, again, think of it as like a data center as a service that's instantaneously delivered for you. Again, for our resellers on the call, if you are working with us already, your channel sales rep can help you through all of this. They can work with you to try to find out who are the right people to call and how to target them. And ultimately, I think databases are a place that is hot right now. And if you could help a customer improve their database performance, lower their costs, better manage their data, you're going to find a super happy customer in the end. All right, the promotion, right? We're offering people that are willing to talk with us first about their application, make sure it's a good fit, a free test drive, a POC. You can put one of these dedicated nodes through its paces. You can try to understand how the technology is delivered. You can work with the Pliops team and our team to try to figure out if it's right for you. And then the best part about this is that you can go right to production right here with us as a service, or you can call the Pliops team and say, hey guys, I love this, but I'm doing my own thing over here. I use HPE, I use Dell. Can you get some cards for me so that I can transform my on-prem data center? From our perspective, we're here to help people find great solutions that make their business better. My goal is to make those solutions available on demand. If that doesn't fit your business model and what you're trying to accomplish, no harm, no foul. We're not here for try to lock you into something. So please take advantage of the opportunity to try this. If you love it and you love the cost associated with it, and you want to have it now, you can go straight to production. And if you want to buy it from Pliops, go for it, no problem. All right, the poll question that all the marketing team loves us to ask so that they can make sure that they hit their sales qualified leads goals. If you want to know more about Bare Metal Cloud, if you want to know more about Pliops, if you want to know about the solution as a whole, smash the like button, or the yes button in this case. We are a technology company. Our goal is to put cool things in your hands so that you can help your company, be more efficient and better performant. And yeah, we're not a super high pressure sales org. So right, so we had a couple questions during the presentation. I want to make sure that we get those answered. A couple people asked about bringing them on-prem and putting them in specific types of infrastructure that they have. Totally doable. There was a question around Bare Metal Cloud and its ability to segment network services and secure things. While the targeted conversation, at least from a Phoenix App perspective, is Bare Metal Cloud, we didn't get a chance to talk about all of its capabilities today. But suffice it to say, the same types of things that you can do in your own data center around network segmentation, layer 2, layer 3, network attachable storage, all these constructs exist in the platform. So you can just kind of point your click your way or use Terraform or Ansible and instantiate things as you desire and have the segmentation that works for you. Again, everything in the platform is dedicated infrastructure from a metal perspective. So there's no one else on the host with you. There's no one else interrupting you, and there's far less security concerns as long as you take the appropriate measures from an operating system perspective to keep that node secure. And then let's go and see what else we have that I think makes sense. All right, okay, where can we get these XDP powered instances? Today, they're only available in the Phoenix region. We're working hard to make them available in the Ashburn region as well, so we'll have a US West, US East capability. If you have needs outside of that, you want to put them in Singapore node, or you want to put them in Amsterdam or something like that, reach out, let us know, let's have a conversation, and we can figure that out. How am I billed for all of these services? There's a minimum monthly commit on the Pliops powered instances. We have an hourly option for all the other instances. And then we have tons of discounts and term options that can allow you to get much better cost efficiencies, especially once you make sure it works first, right? So do a POC, take advantage of the free promo. Then if you want to do something permanently, contact us and we'll get you a great price for that. Everything is as a service. There's no NRCs. There's no one's charging you up front for anything. It's just as you consume it. How fast can an instance be deployed? Nearly instantaneously. The XDP powered instances come up in about 6 or 7 minutes. So no biggie there. And then Grant, can you walk through what the options around operating systems look like today for Pliops powered instances? I know we deploy Ubuntu by default, but if a customer needed other operating systems, what do you guys support?
Yeah, we support a pretty wide set of Linux flavors for operating system, including Oracle Linux most recently. So we expand the list, continue to expand the list, but that's what it looks like.
I think, Grant, like if you had to point to one place that you've seen the biggest success so far inside of your customer base around transforming their environment, you know, what is that technology underlying? Is it MySQL? Is it Postgres? What are your thoughts there?
You know, it's not just any one particular application. This is really broadly applicable because everybody has data everywhere, and it's becoming even more important as it gets as the volume grows. So that's what we're pretty excited about, because everybody, not everybody, but just about everybody can benefit from this because they have data. They need performance, they need scale, they need protection, and that's what we're trying to do here.
I very, very, very much appreciate everyone for taking the time. This is super cool technology. It can be difficult to kind of wrap your head around at times, so please reach out. Let somebody from our team walk you through how it works, and we can tell you very quickly, yes, this is a good fit, or no, this is not a good fit for this technology. I hope everyone stays safe and has a great upcoming, we got St. Patrick's Day, right? Everybody has a great upcoming St. Patrick's Day. And until next time, my name is William Bell, Executive Vice President of Products for Phoenix Nap. Grant Jacobson from Pliops. Thanks for joining me, Grant, and can't wait till the next webinar.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.